Today, I'm going to show you how to change the bottom bracket using a Colnago bike. This is a Colnago V2R from 2019. It has the Colnago T45 threaded bottom bracket shell with adapters, and it has then press-in, I think, BB86 bottom bracket, which was pretty common for pretty common setup at that time, and I think is still in use. However, the press-in pieces creak and make a little bit of noise. It's a little annoying. So I'm going to change it out for a one-piece. So instead of a two-piece with an adapter and a press-in, we're going to have a single thread-in piece. This one is from C-bear in Belgium. They were pretty helpful over the phone. It comes with bearings, etc. So the first step is to remove the existing crankset and bottom bracket. So we're going to start here. This is a Campagnolo chorus. We're going to put in a 10mm hex wrench, and I'm going to use this 10mm open-end wrench to get a little more leverage. This is properly right-hand threaded, so you turn it counterclockwise to loosen it. And once it's loose, you can rotate it until it completely comes out. So this is the non-drive side, and that's the nut right there. We're going to put that down. So the non-drive side came out really easily. On the drive side, there's a retaining spring that you have to remove before you can take off the crank on the drive side. So I just use some pliers. Oops, there it is. And then this should slide out without too much trouble. There we go. It comes out with the Campagnolo bearings as expected. This is the drive side. So we're left with the bottom bracket cups that have been pressed in and the adapters that came with it. So to remove that, I'm going to use a set of channel lock pliers. And here on the, you have to be very careful not to scratch your carbon, but here on the non-drive side, here you can see it's turning pretty readily. I'm pulling out both the pressed in part and the bottom bracket insert together. Okay. So you can see on this side I've taken out the screw-in insert and the press-in piece. I did use the channel locks, which normally if you ever wanted to use this again you wouldn't do, but because I won't be using this again it doesn't really matter. And then we're going to do the same thing, same operation on the drive side. So having taken out the non-drive side, here on the drive side I just loosened it up with my wrench, and this is coming out by hand. This is reverse threaded, so it comes out turning clockwise instead of counterclockwise. So just to repeat, the non-drive side is a normal thread, so it comes out counterclockwise, and the drive side is a reverse thread, so it comes out clockwise. And you can see in this case, it's coming out quite easily. So with that, we can now see through the whole bottom bracket area, and we can see that it's very dirty. So we're going to come in with some denatured alcohol and a rag. And we're going to clean it all up, and we'll come back and show you when it's all clean. So just finishing the cleanup here with the denatured alcohol and the rag, you can see looking through here there's still a little bit of white grease left, but it's not coming out. So this is as clean as it's going to get, but we've done a pretty good job cleaning it up on both sides. And when we install our new bottom bracket, we're going to use, instead of grease, we're going to use some of this Park anti-seize compound, which was recommended by C-bear for the installation of the new bottom bracket. So here's our C-bear screw-in cups, which include both the bearing races and the threads all in one, unlike the two-piece ones we took off. And as mentioned earlier, we're going to install it with anti-seize compound. I'm using this stuff here from Park. So this is the non-drive side here on the left. And we're going to put some on the threads. And I know it's going to make a bit of a mess, but I want to make sure it's everywhere. So we're going to take it, we're going to spread it with our gloved fingers all around the threads, and we'll use a rag at the end to clean up. So this one should go in clockwise. And it's going in nicely. And in this case now, we can use the right tool, which was recommended by C-bear, to screw it in. It would have been nice to have this to take off the Colnago one, but that's all right. So I'm not going to snug it up yet. I'm just going to get it in place like this, just a little bit snug. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side, make anti-seize compound to the bottom bracket. And anti-seize compound to the threads on the bicycle. And as said earlier, this is reverse threaded, so this is going to tighten by going counterclockwise instead of clockwise. Okay. All right, so now that I loose fit the two cups on each side, it's time to torque them down. The spec for this particular bicycle is around 25 Newton meters, which is about 20 foot-pounds. So I have here my handy-dandy torque wrench and the part tool, and we're going to crank it till it clicks. There it goes on that side. And then the other one, if you remember, goes the other way, so we have to reverse our torque wrench. All right, so with that, it's now time to tend to the bearings on the two cranks, which we now have to change from the Campagnolo bearings to the bearings that came with the bottom bracket. So now with the bottom bracket installed, we have to tend to the cranks. So here on the drive side, with these Campy bearings, which go on the various cranks, you have to remove them. So for that, you need a special tool. This is a bearing puller from Part Tool. This is the CBP-8 kit, which includes a deinstallation tool and a handy-dandy installation tool for the new ones. So to get it off, you follow the instructions from Part Tool. So the tool's installed properly now. We've cranked in the side pieces, and then we're going to turn clockwise, and the bearing is going to come off. I can hear it. There it is, and it's now loose. And the same on the non-drive side. We turn it until the bearing comes off. All gone and gone. Now these boots here are made to keep dust out, so we want to keep those. And we also want to make sure things are clean. So I'm going to grab a paper towel and just wipe the old grease off before we apply some new. And for application here, we're just going to use some regular Park Polylube grease. And on these bearings, it doesn't matter which direction they go. They're omnidirectional. And we have a very sophisticated tool for installing them. There's a hole, and you just hit it with a hammer. And now that bearing is properly installed. We do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now it's time to, now that we've changed the bearings on our cranks, it's time to reinstall them. So the Campy cup had that retaining pin, which just holds this in place while you tighten it. That's not needed anymore. So all we have to do here is put some grease on the outside of the bearing and some grease on the inside of the chase here. And slide it in. Now I didn't take the chain off, so I have to be careful to get the chain back on the right position. There we go. Moves nicely. Now we're going to do the other side, which will then engage with this already lubricated fastener. Oh, grease. So copious amounts of grease are important. And the other thing we need is our wave washer, which is part of the Campagnolo setup. That's what came out when we took this apart. The wave washer helps make sure that there's tension between these two sides. Back to our 10 millimeter wrench. Actually, these are off by one. Sorry, they're not vertical. I think they are now. And just make this hand tight for now. Make sure it rotates smoothly and that everything is in opposition, which it looks that way. And now to tighten it snug, we go back to our 10 millimeter wrench and our, hex wrench, and we squeeze it together as tight as it can go. I'm sure there's a torque rating, but the answer is make it tight. And with that, we have now installed a new bottom bracket, new bearings, and reinstalled our cranks. That's it. I hope this is helpful.